When Sofie, a waitress in a struggling small town, finds a $1 million check left by a mysterious benefactor, she faces a life-altering choice. Torn between her dreams and ethical dilemmas, Sofie embarks on a journey to uncover the truth behind the check. Will she embrace her second chance or let it slip away, learning that true wealth lies in connections and courage? The diner sat on the corner of Main and Elm, a small-town fixture with its faded retro sign and warm glow of neon lights that hummed softly in the early morning hours. Every day at sunrise, the town's routine seemed to be woven into the fabric of this modest little place, aptly named Millie's Diner, after the original owner. The clink of ceramic coffee cups, the gentle whoosh of the coffee machine, and the sizzle of bacon on the griddle were the sounds of the morning symphony that played as Sofie, a waitress in her late 20s, prepared for the day ahead. Inside, the smell of brewed coffee mingled with the inviting aroma of grilled eggs and bacon, filling the diner with a warmth that softened even the harshest winter mornings. It was the kind of place where regulars came not only for a meal, but for a slice of familiarity and comfort in a world that sometimes felt uncertain. The diner itself was simple, yet cozy, with red leather booths lined along the windows, tables that had seen years of meals and memories, and a checkered black and white tile floor. A jukebox stood proudly in the corner, though it rarely played anything beyond the few classics that were left in its rotation. Even with its worn-out charm, there was something special about Millie's. To Sofie, it was more than a workplace. It was a place where she could disappear into the rhythm of serving coffee, taking orders, and exchanging small talk with people she'd known since childhood. This small town, nestled among gentle hills and fields that stretched out like an endless quilt, was quiet and unassuming. Once upon a time, it had been a bustling hub, with a factory that brought in jobs and families, but as industries moved away, the town had faded. The streets had lost some of their luster, and closed-up shops with "for sale" signs lined parts of the main strip. Life moved a little slower here, and with that slowness came a certain resilience that bound the people together. At Millie's, everyone knew everyone's stories, or at least the versions that were safe enough to tell. Behind the counter, Sofie moved with practiced ease. In her late 20s, she had the kind of face that seemed both young and wise, with soft brown eyes that held a quiet kindness and a smile that made people feel welcome. She kept her auburn hair tied back, always a little frizzy from the early morning rush, and wore the diner's uniform with a comfortable familiarity. The gentle lines under her eyes hinted at sleepless nights and dreams that had yet to come true. Sofie was known around town for her kind heart and willingness to help, though she was also known to lose herself in her thoughts, sometimes gazing out the window as though there was something on the horizon only she could see. Her life was simple, almost repetitive, and though she loved the diner and the people who filled it, she couldn't help but feel stuck. Financially, things were tight. The paycheck she earned barely covered her rent, let alone her student loans or the expenses that seemed to pile up endlessly. Her dreams, once bright and hopeful, had faded over the years, buried under the weight of bills and responsibilities. She had once wanted to travel, to write, to explore, but life had other plans, and now she found herself here, in this small town, waiting tables and wondering if her dreams were slipping away. Despite the weariness that sometimes crept into her voice, Sofie had a rare ability to make others feel heard and seen. She took the time to listen, to learn each regular's favorite meal, to know when to ask how someone's day was, and when to simply refill their coffee in silence. She had a gentle patience that made her beloved among the diner's patrons. The diner's regulars each had their own quirks and stories, forming a tapestry of personalities that brightened Sofie's days, even as they reminded her of her own place in this town. There was Mr. Riley, a retired teacher who spent his mornings nursing a coffee and reading the newspaper from front to back. His gruff exterior hid a kind heart, and he often left a little extra tip for a rainy day he'd say with a wink. Nancy and George were an elderly couple who came in every Sunday after church, always ordering the same meal. Pancakes for her, scrambled eggs for him. They'd been married for over 50 years, and their quiet companionship was something Sofie admired deeply. Then there was Margot, a single mother working 2 jobs to make ends meet. She often brought her young son, Danny, to the diner after school, giving him a warm meal and a place to do his homework. Sofie adored Danny, and often found herself slipping him an extra cookie or slice of pie when Margot wasn't looking. Danny, with his wide, curious eyes and endless questions, reminded Sofie of herself at his age, full of wonder and dreams before the world seemed to narrow down. Among the staff, Jake, the cook, was a fixture in the diner's life. Gruff and with a penchant for grumbling, Jake had a heart of gold. He'd been cooking at Millie's for longer than most people could remember, and often slipped extra bacon to customers he liked. Despite his tough exterior, he watched out for Sofie like an older brother, his grumbling more affectionate than critical. The only other waitress, Linda, was a mother of 3, who often worked double shifts to provide for her kids. She was quick with a joke, and even quicker to lend an ear, her laughter filling the diner on the busiest mornings. Linda had a way of making everyone feel like family, and though she and Sofie had only known each other a few years, their friendship was as solid as any. Linda would often catch Sofie staring out the window, lost in thought, and would give her a gentle nudge, saying, "Dreaming again, Soph? Don't let that heart of yours drift too far." Though Sofie was close with her diner family, her real family was complicated. Her mother had passed away when she was young, leaving her father to raise her alone. He was a practical man, one who believed in working hard and making do with what life gave you. While he loved Sofie, he had always struggled to understand her dreams, preferring she find real work that offered stability and security. Over the years, their relationship had grown strained, with Sofie feeling both love and frustration toward him. Her best friend, Emily, was one of the few people who knew the depth of Sofie's longing for something more. They'd grown up together, sharing childhood dreams of adventure and laughter under the stars. Emily had moved to the city a few years ago, and though they kept in touch, it wasn't the same. Sofie sometimes envied Emily's courage to leave, but she knew her friend's absence had left a void, one she struggled to fill. These people formed Sofie's world, familiar faces, comforting voices, and shared moments that reminded her why she stayed. Yet, as she moved through her days, the weight of unfulfilled dreams and the relentless pull of possibility lingered, like a whisper at the back of her mind. It was as though her heart belonged to both the diner and the vast, unexplored world beyond it, caught between the life she knew and the one she yearned for. And then, one quiet afternoon, that world tilted on its axis when Sofie found a folded check on a table with a note that would change her life forever. The afternoon sun cast a golden hue over Millie's diner, filtering through the front windows and illuminating the checkered floor. The usual hum of conversation was quieter at this hour, with only a few patrons scattered among the booths. Sofie wiped down the counter, her thoughts drifting as she listened to the faint sounds of coffee brewing and the occasional clink of dishes from the kitchen. It was a peaceful lull in a day that often swelled with the busyness of breakfast and lunch. As she reached the far corner table, a glimmer of something caught her eye. It was unusual for customers to leave anything behind, especially in this diner, where patrons seemed to treat their meals and their moments there as sacred. Sofie approached the table cautiously, her heart quickening slightly as she noticed the folded paper lying neatly next to a half-empty cup of coffee. Curiosity piqued. She gently picked up the paper and unfolded it. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized it was a check. Not just any check, but a check for $1 million. The numbers stared back at her, surreal and impossible, as if mocking her mundane reality. She glanced around, but the diner was emptying out, with only a few regulars lost in their own conversations. Who could have left this, and why? Next to the check was a note, handwritten in elegant flowing script. As she read the words, her heart raced and her fingers trembled slightly. To the dreamer waiting for a second chance. This is your opportunity to change everything. Accept the conditions, and you could live the life you've always wanted. Deny it, and nothing will change. Choose wisely. Sofie's mind spun with the implications. $1 million. She had always daydreamed about what she would do with that kind of money. Traveling, pursuing her writing, helping her father retire. Yet her heart sank at the weight of the note's final words. Accept the conditions. What did that mean? What conditions? Was this some kind of joke? She felt a flutter of hope and trepidation all at once. Her fingers brushed over the check, the paper feeling foreign and heavy in her grasp. She glanced around the diner again, half expecting to see someone watching her, someone who would explain the riddle this check represented. But there was only silence, the kind that enveloped her thoughts and made them echo. As she tucked the check and note carefully into her apron pocket, her mind raced with possibilities. She couldn't just ignore this. $1 million could change everything for her. But what if it came with strings attached? The thought of accepting something so extraordinary from an anonymous source felt wrong, tainted with uncertainty. Would this money truly help her, or simply drag her deeper into a web of complications she could not foresee? Sofie returned to her duties, but her thoughts were consumed by the check in her pocket. The diner buzzed around her, but she felt as though she was in a bubble, the sounds and faces of her regulars fading into the background. $1 million. It felt like a lifeline thrown to her amidst a sea of financial struggle and unfulfilled dreams. Yet the ethical implications gnawed at her. As she refilled coffee cups and delivered plates of food, her mind was awash with the weight of decisions. She had always been a good person, raised to value hard work and honesty. Accepting this money without knowing its source felt like a betrayal of those principles. But could she afford to be idealistic? The bills piled high on her kitchen table. The conversations with her father about money and stability echoed in her ears. The yearning for a better life tugged at her heart, reminding her of the dreams she had set aside. After her shift ended, Sofie sat in the quiet diner, the chairs pushed up against the tables, the sounds of clinking plates giving way to stillness. She brought out the check and note again, her heart racing. She imagined how $1 million could transform her life, paying off her student loans, taking her father on that trip he had always wanted, and perhaps even pursuing her dreams of writing and traveling. It was intoxicating to think about. But what if it came with a price? Who was the anonymous customer, and why had they chosen her? The notion that her acceptance might be tied to some unknown condition sent a chill down her spine. She had always admired people who took risks, who chased their dreams, no matter the consequences, but could she be one of them? The thought of being tied to a mysterious benefactor, a puppet in a game she didn't understand, terrified her. Her mind wandered back to the conversation she had shared with Linda, her fellow waitress. They often discussed their dreams over coffee breaks, Linda's plans for her children's future, and Sofie's hopes for her writing. You have to take chances, Soph. Sometimes you have to leap and hope the net will appear, Linda would say, her voice filled with the kind of certainty that Sofie longed for. But what if the leap meant losing herself? The thought made her hesitate. Sofie often played it safe, buried under her responsibilities, and the idea of stepping out of her comfort zone felt monumental. She wanted to be brave, to claim her life, but this felt different. This was not just about her. It involved an act of faith in a stranger and a leap into the unknown. Days passed as she wrestled with the decision, the check and note tucked away in a box beneath her bed, hidden yet haunting her every waking moment. She returned to the diner each day, serving meals and listening to stories, but the weight of the opportunity felt like an uninvited guest at the table. One evening, as she prepared to close up, Sofie found herself alone in the diner once more. The last customer had left, and the silence pressed in around her like a blanket. She took a deep breath and retrieved the check from its hiding place. She spread it out on the counter, its stark white paper and bold numbers glowing under the diner's fluorescent lights. The note lay beside it, the words echoing in her mind. The chance for a second chance. Was it worth the risk? She picked up a pen and began to write her thoughts down, a habit she had kept since she was young. The words flowed onto the page, revealing the tangled web of her feelings: hope, fear, excitement, and anxiety. What if this is the opportunity I've been waiting for? What if I don't take it and regret it forever? But what if I step into a world I can't control? As she wrote, the diner's comforting sounds seemed to fade, replaced by the rhythm of her thoughts. She was lost in her own head, debating the possibility of acceptance versus the fear of the unknown. She thought of Emily, of their shared dreams, and what she would say if she were there. She imagined her friend's encouraging smile, the way she had always believed in Sofie's potential, even when Sofie herself didn't. With the pen hovering over the paper, Sofie felt a surge of determination. She wanted more than the life she was living. She wanted to write stories, to explore. She wanted to write stories, to explore, to live fully. Yet the thought of a mysterious benefactor's conditions loomed ominously. Finally, with a shaky breath, Sofie made her decision. She would find out more about this opportunity, would confront the mysterious offer head-on. It was time to take the leap, to step out of the safety of her predictable world. With every ounce of courage she could muster, she resolved to accept the challenge of the unknown, to chase the dream she had allowed to slip away for too long. As the sun set outside, casting a warm glow through the diner's windows, Sofie folded the check and note carefully, slipping them back into her pocket. Tomorrow, she would begin to unravel the mystery that had fallen into her lap. $1 million check and a chance for a new beginning. Whatever the conditions, she was ready to discover what lay ahead. Sofie awoke the next morning with the sunlight streaming through her bedroom window, illuminating the cluttered space that had become both her sanctuary and prison. The $1 million check lay in her nightstand, an object of both temptation and anxiety. As she stared at the ceiling, her mind replayed the decision she had made the night before, the promise she had made to herself to embrace the unknown. But as the day wore on, the weight of her resolve began to buckle under the pressure of doubt. What if she was making a mistake? Sofie sat on the edge of her bed, the check feeling like a ticking time bomb beneath her fingers. She had always been practical, a planner who calculated every risk before taking a leap. Now, with this extraordinary opportunity dangling in front of her, all her careful calculations seemed meaningless. What if the money wasn't a gift at all, but a curse wrapped in a shiny bow? She thought back to her upbringing, the lessons taught by her parents about hard work and the importance of earning one's keep. Her mother had always said, "Nothing comes for free, Sofie. If it seems too good to be true, it usually is." Those words echoed in her mind as she chewed her lip, wrestling with the anxiety that gripped her heart. Sofie's phone buzzed on the bedside table, breaking her reverie. It was a text from Emily, her best friend. "Hey, you up for coffee before work? Need to talk." Talk? Sofie hesitated, unsure if she was ready to share her burden with anyone yet. But Emily's energy was infectious, and after a moment of indecision she replied, "Sure. See you in 30. At the small cafe around the corner, Sofie found Emily sitting at their usual table, her face alight with excitement. As Sofie slid into the chair opposite her, Emily's smile faltered slightly at the sight of Sofie's tense expression. "What's up, Soph? You look like you've seen a ghost," Emily remarked, stirring her coffee vigorously. Sofie forced a smile, her heart racing as she considered how to explain the whirlwind that had upended her life. "It's complicated. Complicated can be good. It means things are changing." Emily leaned in, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. After a moment of hesitation, Sofie revealed the existence of the check and the note, watching as Emily's expression shifted from intrigue to disbelief. $1 million, Emily whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "This is incredible. You have to cash it, Sofie. Think of everything you could do." Sofie's stomach churned at the prospect. But what if it's not real? What if I get in trouble? I don't know if I deserve it, Em. Emily frowned, crossing her arms. What do you mean, deserve? You work harder than anyone I know. You've always dreamed of writing, of traveling. This could be your chance. But what if I fail? Sophie's voice trembled, the fear spilling out. What if it all goes wrong and I lose everything? Soph, you'll never know until you try. It's not just about the money. It's about what you do with it. Just think about it. How many times have we talked about your dreams? This is your opportunity to grab them. Sophie felt her defenses softening under Emily's encouragement, yet doubt still clung to her like a shadow. I don't know. I just have this feeling that there's something more to it. Something I don't understand. Emily's brow furrowed, but she nodded in understanding. Just be careful, okay? Talk to someone you trust. I know this is huge, but don't let fear hold you back. You have options. After their coffee, Sophie returned home, her heart heavy with unresolved feelings. She needed to take action, to explore what this opportunity meant, but the uncertainty loomed larger than ever. The next morning, Sophie donned her waitress uniform and headed to the diner. The familiar sounds of sizzling bacon and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee welcomed her as she stepped inside. Yet her heart raced with anxiety as she approached the counter, determined to take the first step in resolving her dilemma. Hey Sophie, you all right? You've been a bit off lately, Linda called out as she arranged menus at the front. Just tired, Sophie replied, forcing a smile. She tried to shake off the weight of her thoughts and threw herself into her work. As the day progressed, she found herself eyeing the bank across the street during her breaks, her thoughts fixating on the check tucked away in her apron pocket. Could she really do it? Would they even cash it? When her shift ended, Sophie gathered her courage and made her way to the bank. The bell above the door chimed, a familiar sound now laden with new meaning. Inside, the atmosphere was bustling, customers moving through the lines, while tellers busily processed transactions. Sophie approached a teller, a stern-looking woman with glasses perched on her nose. "Hi, I'd like to cash this check," she said, pulling the check from her pocket. The teller's eyes widened as she glanced at the amount. $1 million! And who issued this check? It was an anonymous customer at the diner, Sophie stammered, feeling her face flush. The teller frowned, skepticism written all over her face. "I can't process this without more information. You'll need to verify its legitimacy." Sophie's heart sank. "Can't I just cash it?" "I'm afraid not. We need to ensure that the check is valid. I suggest you contact the issuer or your bank for further instructions." As she walked out of the bank, the check felt heavier than ever in her pocket, a stark reminder of her new reality. Doubt gnawed at her. What if she couldn't even cash it? What if it was all a mirage and she was chasing a dream that didn't exist? That evening, Sophie decided to confide in her family. They had always been her sounding board, the people who encouraged her to follow her heart. She invited her father over for dinner, hoping for a heartfelt conversation. Her father arrived, his face lined with years of hard work and sacrifice. As they sat down to a simple meal, Sophie felt her stomach twist with anxiety. She took a deep breath and laid out her news. "Dad, I found something at the diner today," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "A check for $1 million. Her father's fork paused mid-air, disbelief etched on his face. "What? $1 million? Where did it come from?" Sophie explained everything, from the anonymous customer to the note. Her father listened intently, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. "Sophie, this doesn't sound right. It's too good to be true. You don't know where that money is coming from or what strings are attached," he cautioned, shaking his head. "I know, but think about it. I could pay off debts, help with the house, and pursue my writing," Sophie exclaimed, her voice rising in excitement. Her father leaned back, crossing his arms. "But what if it's a scam? You could end up in legal trouble. You've always been the responsible one, Soph. Don't let greed cloud your judgment." Sophie felt her heart sink. "I'm not trying to be greedy. I understand that you want more for yourself, but you need to be careful. You've always been our rock, and I don't want to see you get hurt." The conversation hung heavy in the air, and Sophie felt the weight of her father's words pressing down on her. She was torn between the longing for a better life and the fear of losing the stability she had always known. As her father left that night, Sofie couldn't shake the feeling of despair. Her dreams felt more elusive than ever, tangled in a web of doubt and fear. Days turned into a blur as Sofie continued to wrestle with her decision. Each morning she stared at the check as it lay hidden in her drawer, a silent reminder of everything she wished for and everything she feared. The voices of her family and friends echoed in her mind, each opinion adding to the chaos. Every time she considered cashing the check, memories of her upbringing resurfaced, her parents' hard work, the lessons about honesty and integrity. She didn't want to jeopardize that legacy. One evening, as she lay in bed, the glow of her phone illuminated her room. A message from Emily popped up. "Have you thought about what I said? I really think you should at least try." Sofie took a deep breath, feeling the pressure of her friend's enthusiasm mixed with her own apprehension. Could she really take that leap? What would it mean for her future? The uncertainty felt suffocating, and she knew that she had to make a decision soon. As the days passed, Sophie's self-doubt battled with her desire for change, leaving her teetering on the edge of a decision that would forever alter the course of her life. The $1 million check was no longer just a piece of paper. It had become a symbol of everything she had ever wanted and everything she feared losing. But for better or worse, Sofie knew that she needed to confront the reality of the check head-on. She couldn't allow fear to dictate her choices any longer. Tomorrow, she would take the next step, no matter how daunting it seemed. The following morning, Sofie woke with a new sense of determination. Today would be different. She dressed with purpose, her usual waitress uniform feeling like armor against the doubts that had plagued her. She would not let fear paralyze her any longer. It was time to face the mystery of the check and take charge of her life. Before her shift, Sofie headed to the diner's back office, where the manager kept the records. She had made up her mind. She would reach out to the bank and clarify the situation. "Hey, Steve, do you have a minute?" she asked as she knocked on the office door. "Sure, Soph. What's up?" Steve replied, looking up from his paperwork. Sofie took a deep breath. "I need your advice on something. I found this check, and I'm not sure how to handle it." She explained the situation, her heart racing as she laid it all bare. Steve raised an eyebrow, a mix of surprise and concern crossing his face. "Wow, that's a lot of money. Have you thought about what you'll do next?" "I need to know if I can cash it, but they want verification. I just don't want to get in over my head," she admitted, feeling the weight of his gaze. "Look, Sofie, if this is legitimate, it could really change your life. But be smart about it. Talk to a lawyer or someone who can help you navigate this. Don't rush into anything without knowing what you're getting into." Sofie nodded, the advice resonating with her. She had been too focused on the check itself and not enough on the practicalities of what it could mean. "Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it," she said, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within her. That evening, armed with new resolve, Sofie contacted a local attorney she had heard about through a friend. She explained her situation, and to her relief, the attorney agreed to meet her the next day. The conversation felt pivotal. She had taken a step toward understanding her options, and it invigorated her. As she prepared for the meeting, she felt a mix of excitement and anxiety, the kind that came with stepping into the unknown. The next day, she arrived at the attorney's office, the check safely in her purse. The attorney, a middle-aged woman named Sarah, listened carefully as Sofie recounted the events leading up to her discovery of the check. "Okay, Sofie, let's take this one step at a time," Sarah said, her voice calm and reassuring. "The first thing we need to do is confirm that this check is legitimate. If it is, we can discuss your options moving forward." As they delved into the details, Sofie felt a sense of clarity wash over her. She was no longer just a waitress in a small diner. She was a woman taking control of her life, armed with knowledge and support. After discussing various scenarios, Sarah explained the legal implications of accepting such a large sum of money. There are many factors to consider: taxes, potential liabilities, and the importance of transparency. But you also have the right to pursue your dreams and create a life you love. Sofie left the meeting with a sense of purpose. She was ready to uncover the truth about the check and its implications, but more importantly, she was ready to confront her fears and take action. As she returned to the diner that evening, the familiar sounds and smells greeted her, but something within her had shifted. The check was still a mystery, but she was no longer paralyzed by it. She had allies now, people who believed in her, and a plan to move forward. Sofie took a deep breath and smiled as she walked through the diner doors. The rising action of her life was unfolding, and she was ready to face whatever came next. As Sofie poured coffee into a steaming mug at the diner, her mind wandered back to her childhood, a time filled with dreams, ambition, and an innocence she felt she had lost. Growing up in a small town, she had always believed in the power of possibility. Her walls were plastered with magazine cutouts of cities she longed to visit and quotes from famous writers whose words inspired her. She had aspired to be a novelist, to weave tales that would take readers to places they had never imagined. But dreams, she had learned, came at a cost. Sofie's father had worked tirelessly at the local factory, and her mother had juggled multiple jobs to keep food on the table. They had instilled a strong work ethic in her and her younger brother Liam, teaching them the importance of stability and responsibility. Yet somewhere along the way, Sofie's dreams were overshadowed by the reality of life's challenges. When her father suffered an injury that left him unable to work, the family's financial situation deteriorated rapidly. Sofie had just finished high school, and the weight of her family's struggles pressed heavily on her shoulders. Instead of pursuing a degree in creative writing, she took on a job at the diner, a decision that felt like a betrayal to her younger self, but one that seemed necessary to support her family. As she scrubbed tables and served customers, the flicker of her dreams dimmed with each passing year. The stacks of rejection letters she had received from publishers became a reminder of what could have been, further solidifying her belief that she was unworthy of success. The $1 million check now felt like a taunt, a challenge that stirred up feelings of inadequacy she had worked so hard to bury. One evening after her shift, Sofie decided to visit her mother, hoping for a comforting embrace and a slice of her homemade apple pie. Her mother, Claire, was in the kitchen when Sofie arrived, the sweet smell of cinnamon filling the air. The sight of her mother, wearing a flour-dusted apron, her hair pulled into a messy bun, always brought Sofie a sense of calm. "Hi, sweetheart, I made your favorite," Claire said, pulling out a warm pie from the oven. "Thanks, Mom. It smells amazing," Sofie replied, feeling a wave of nostalgia wash over her. They settled at the kitchen table, and as they ate, Claire's keen eyes caught Sofie's lingering unease. "What's bothering you, dear?" her mother asked gently, placing her hand over Sofie's. Sofie hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I found a check at the diner, $1 million. Claire's eyes widened. $1 million? Sofie, that's incredible. What are you going to do with it? I don't know, Sofie admitted, her heart racing. I feel like it's too good to be true. I'm scared it's a mistake or a scam. Her mother looked at her with concern. You've always been practical, but you also have to trust yourself. You have dreams, Sofie. Don't let fear keep you from exploring this opportunity. But you need to be careful. Talk to someone who can help you figure this out. I will, Sofie promised, but the fear still clung to her like a heavy fog. Later that evening, she and her mother sat on the porch, the soft glow of string lights illuminating their faces. Claire shared stories from her youth, her own dreams that had been set aside for family responsibilities. I had ambitions to travel, to see the world, she reminisced. But life took me in a different direction. Just remember, it's never too late to chase your dreams. You're still young, Sofie. This might be your moment. As her mother's words echoed in her heart, Sofie felt a flicker of hope, a glimmer of belief that maybe she was worthy of a second chance. The next day, Sofie decided to confide in Emily again, sensing the need for support from someone who truly understood her. They met at their favorite cafe, the scent of fresh pastries filling the air. "Soph, you look more determined today," Emily exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "I am. I talked to my mom last night, and she really helped me see things differently," Sofie said, taking a sip of her coffee. Emily leaned in, intrigued. What did she say? Sofie explained the weight of her childhood dreams and how the check had reignited feelings of unworthiness. "I just feel like I've let so many opportunities slip away. What if I mess this up?" Emily shook her head, her voice firm. "You're not going to mess this up. You have people who care about you, and this could be the start of something amazing. Just think about all the stories you want to tell. You owe it to yourself to at least try." As they talked, Sofie felt the energy shift between them, Emily's passion igniting something deep within her. "You know, I've always admired your ability to see the world differently," she admitted. "You make me want to be brave." "Because you are brave. You just need to believe it," Emily replied, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. Their conversation deepened, revealing shared experiences and vulnerabilities. Sofie found solace in their friendship, knowing she could lean on Emily for support as she navigated this unexpected journey. One regular customer at the diner caught Sofie's attention more than the others. Jack, a tall man in his early 30s with dark hair and piercing green eyes. He was a writer himself, often seen with a notebook in hand, scribbling down thoughts or typing on his laptop. Jack had a gentle demeanor and a kindness that made him approachable. One afternoon, while Sofie was clearing tables, she noticed him deep in thought. She hesitated before approaching him. "Hey, Jack, what are you working on today?" He looked up, a smile spreading across his face. "Oh, just some ideas for a new story. Trying to figure out the character's motivation. How about you? Any exciting plans?" Sofie hesitated, the $1 million check still fresh in her mind. "Just the usual grind at the diner, you know. Nothing too exciting," she replied, trying to sound casual. Jack leaned back, studying her. "You know, I can see that you have stories in you. You shouldn't hide them away. Life's too short for that." Sofie felt her cheeks flush, his encouragement stirring something inside her. "You really think so?" "Absolutely. You've got a way of seeing things that not everyone does. It's a gift," Jack said earnestly. "And if I can be honest, I've been rooting for you from afar. You have a spark that's hard to ignore." Sofie's heart raced. "Thank you. That means a lot," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just don't know if I'm ready to take the plunge." "Take it from someone who knows. There's never a perfect time. You just have to jump in, even if it scares you," Jack replied, his gaze unwavering. Their conversations grew more frequent over the next few weeks, Sofie finding comfort in Jack's presence. He challenged her to look at the check differently, urging her to see it as an opportunity rather than a burden. "Sometimes you need to take a risk to find what you truly want," he encouraged one evening as they shared a slice of pie after her shift. "Don't let fear dictate your choices. Embrace the unknown." One evening, Sofie opened up about the mysterious note that had accompanied the check. It said something about a second chance and a life-changing opportunity, she recalled, her brow furrowed in thought. "I can't help but wonder who left it and why." Jack leaned in, intrigued. "Maybe it's someone who believes in you more than you realize. They could be trying to push you toward your dreams." Sofie sighed, uncertainty clouding her mind. "But what if they're expecting something in return? What if I can't meet their expectations?" Jack placed his hand on hers, the warmth of his touch grounding her. "You won't know unless you explore it. The key is to set your own expectations. This is about you, Sofie, not the benefactor." His words resonated deeply within her. The check represented more than just a monetary value. It was a reflection of her potential, her dreams waiting to be realized. For the first time, Sofie felt a spark of excitement. Perhaps this was the push she needed to break free from the confines of her life. As days turned into weeks, Sofie's resolve grew stronger. She continued to meet Jack at the diner, their conversations becoming a source of inspiration and motivation. With each interaction, the layers of her insecurities peeled away, replaced by a burgeoning belief in herself and her abilities. One rainy afternoon, as Sofie and Jack sat in a cozy booth, she made a decision. "I want to try to cash the check. I want to take this chance," she said, her voice steady. "Even if it scares me." Jack's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's the spirit. Let's figure this out together. You're not alone in this." As they brainstormed a plan, Sofie felt a surge of hope. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead, armed with newfound confidence and the support of friends who believed in her. The road ahead was uncertain, but with Jack by her side, she felt ready to embrace it. Sofie had spent too long feeling unworthy, too long letting fear hold her back. The $1 million check wasn't just a gift, it was a catalyst for change, a chance to reclaim her dreams and forge a new path forward. With the weight of her past gradually lifting, Sofie stepped into her future, ready to unravel the mystery of the benefactor and embrace the life-changing opportunity that awaited her. With Jack's support fueling her resolve, Sofie decided it was time to delve deeper into the mystery of the benefactor behind the $1 million check. No longer would she allow fear to paralyze her. It was time to uncover the truth. The next morning, Sofie sat at her small kitchen table, a cup of coffee in hand, and began jotting down a list of possible leads. The diner was a hub of information. Perhaps someone had seen the mysterious customer who left the check. She recalled the brief encounter she had with the patron that day, his face obscured by the brim of a hat and the shadows cast by the diner's dim lighting. "Okay, Sofie," she muttered to herself, "time to dig." As she arrived at the diner that day, the comforting clatter of dishes and the sizzling of the grill enveloped her like a warm embrace. The familiar sight of the regulars brought a sense of solace, yet her heart raced with determination. "Hey, Sofie!" Emily called out as she entered the diner. "What's with the serious look?" "I'm on a mission," Sofie replied, excitement bubbling within her. "I want to find out who left that check." Emily's eyes widened. "You're really going for it? I love it. How can I help?" "Maybe you can talk to some of the regulars and see if anyone remembers anything about that day," Sofie suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. Emily nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. I'll ask around." As they began their shifts, Sofie moved from table to table, casually inquiring about the day the check had appeared. "Did anyone see a tall man in a hat?" she asked an older couple who frequented the diner. "Oh, I think I did," the man replied, stroking his grey beard thoughtfully. "He came in a few times, always sitting in that corner booth. Quiet fellow, but he tipped well." Sofie's heart raced at this new lead. "Did he say anything?" The woman chimed in, "Not much. Just kept to himself, really. A bit of a mystery, that one." "Do you remember what he looked like?" Sofie pressed, eager for more details. "Just a shadow, really. But I think he had a notebook with him," the man said, glancing at his wife. "A notebook," Sofie repeated, her curiosity piqued. "What color was it?" "Black, I believe," the woman added. "He always seemed lost in thought." Sofie jotted down notes, her mind spinning with the implications. The reclusive man with a notebook, could he be the benefactor? The thought sent shivers down her spine, blending excitement with a hint of dread. That evening she returned home, her mind buzzing with ideas. Jack's words echoed in her mind, "You're not alone in this," with newfound determination. Sofie decided to pay a visit to the address she had found through a bit of online sleuthing, an expansive estate just outside town. But as the days passed, Sofie faced unexpected roadblocks. Each time she attempted to gather more information, she encountered strange messages that made her second-guess her instincts. One day, while scrolling through her phone, she noticed a comment on her social media post about her plans to investigate. The message read, "Be careful what you seek. Not all that glitters is gold." The anonymous nature of the comment sent a chill down her spine. She brushed it off as a prank, but it lingered in her mind, amplifying her anxiety. The following week, while talking to Emily at the diner, Sofie noticed a shadowy figure lurking outside. "Hey, do you see that guy?" she whispered, pointing discreetly. Emily turned, squinting. "He looks familiar, doesn't he? Like one of those mystery writers." "Maybe he's been following me," Sofie said, her voice trembling with unease. "I need to find out more." As Sophie delved deeper into her investigation, she received an unexpected phone call one afternoon. "Hello," she answered, recognizing the number as one she didn't know. "Is this Sophie?" a low voice inquired, sending a shiver down her spine. "Who is this?" she demanded, her heart racing. "I have information about the check," the voice replied, cryptically before abruptly hanging up. Sophie stared at her phone, a mix of fear and curiosity bubbling within her. Who was that? Why had they hung up? Her heart pounded as she considered the implications. Was this person connected to the benefactor? Her mind raced with possibilities as she confided in Jack later that day. "I received a strange call, and they mentioned the check," she said, her hands trembling. "Did you call them back?" Jack asked, leaning forward in concern. "I didn't want to take the risk. What if they were just playing games?" Jack considered this. "Maybe it's worth following up. If they know something, it could lead you to the truth." As Sophie continued her investigation, tension began to rise. She discovered that the man she was pursuing, a wealthy recluse named Arthur Caldwell, had a reputation for being a hermit rarely seen in town and known for his secretive nature. Whispers about his past echoed in the community, tales of lost fortunes and unfulfilled dreams that struck a chord within Sophie. But what was his connection to the check? Why had he chosen her? Each unanswered question tightened the knot in her stomach, leading her to believe that perhaps this encounter wouldn't just change her life, it could unveil secrets far more profound than she had imagined. As she navigated this uncharted territory, Sophie felt a sense of foreboding. The cryptic message on the check lingered in her mind. Was this really a second chance, or was it an invitation into a web of secrets she wasn't prepared to unravel? Her instinct screamed that she was getting closer, yet the deeper she delved, the more complex the situation became. With each lead, she sensed the stakes rising, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. The confrontation with the benefactor loomed ever closer, shrouded in uncertainty. Days later, Sophie returned home to find a small envelope slipped under her door. Her heart raced as she picked it up, her name scrawled across the front in elegant handwriting. Inside was a simple note: "The truth lies within. Follow the whispers of the past." The words resonated deeply, stirring something inside her. What whispers? What truth? Sophie knew one thing: she was on the cusp of discovering something life-altering. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, and with Jack by her side, she was determined to face whatever awaited her. As she prepared for the next steps in her investigation, a sense of resolve filled her heart. The journey was fraught with uncertainty, but Sophie was ready to confront the mysteries surrounding the benefactor and the unexpected truths she might discover. Sophie's heart raced as she drove along the winding road leading to the outskirts of town. The estate loomed ahead, an imposing structure that seemed to echo the weight of the decisions she faced. She had pieced together enough information from her investigations to discover that Arthur Caldwell, the reclusive benefactor, had a storied past tied to the town she knew so well. As she parked her car, memories flooded her mind. Stories whispered in the diner about Arthur, the man who had once been a local hero. He had lost everything in a tragic accident that had left the community reeling. Now, he had returned to the shadows, cloistered in his grand home, away from the world that had turned its back on him. Sophie couldn't help but wonder if her journey had drawn her into his hidden narrative. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of her car and made her way to the entrance. The large wooden door loomed before her like a threshold between her old life and whatever awaited her on the other side. With a shaky hand she knocked, the sound echoing ominously. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing a tall, thin man with graying hair and piercing blue eyes. "Sophie," he said, a hint of recognition crossing his face. "I've been expecting you." As she stepped inside, Sophie felt a chill run down her spine. The foyer was grand yet somber, adorned with portraits of people long gone, their eyes seemingly following her every move. Arthur Caldwell led her to a sitting room filled with books, the scent of old paper mixing with the faint aroma of fresh coffee. "Please sit," he gestured towards a plush armchair, and Sophie obliged, her heart pounding in her chest. "I received your check," she said, trying to maintain composure, "but I need to know why you chose me." Arthur studied her for a moment, his expression inscrutable. "You have a kind heart, Sophie. I've seen how you treat others in the diner. Your compassion caught my attention. I wanted to give you a second chance, if you will." Sophie's mind raced. "But $1 million? That's a lot of money. Why me?" He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Because I see potential in you. But with this gift comes a moral challenge." Arthur paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "You can keep the money, but there are conditions. You must use it to help those in need, create something that benefits the community. If you choose to spend it solely on yourself, I will expect the check back." Sofie's breath caught in her throat. "Help others? Why can't I just use it for my own dreams?" "Because that's not what this is about," Arthur replied, his voice firm yet gentle. "Life has taught me that true fulfillment comes from giving back, not from personal gain. The choice is yours, but consider what kind of person you want to be." A whirlwind of thoughts spun through Sofie's mind. She had envisioned this moment as a golden opportunity to escape her life of struggle. Yet Arthur's words forced her to confront the very essence of her values. As she sat in silence, Sofie felt her internal conflict intensifying. "What if I fail? What if I can't make a difference?" She looked at Arthur, searching for answers in his gaze. "What if I'm not the person you think I am?" He leaned back, the corners of his mouth twitching upward. "Everyone has doubts, Sofie. I did when I faced my own tragedy. But it was in those moments of darkness that I learned who I truly was. I want you to discover that too." Sofie's heart ached at the thought of facing her own darkness. The weight of her circumstances and unfulfilled dreams collided with the possibility of something greater. Could she really embrace this challenge? "What do you get out of this?" Sofie asked, her voice trembling. "Why are you so invested in my choices?" Arthur's expression softened, revealing a hint of vulnerability. "Because you remind me of myself, a young dreamer with the world at her feet, but trapped by circumstance. I want to help you break free, just as I wish someone had done for me." Intrigued, Sofie leaned in, her curiosity piqued. "What happened to you?" Arthur took a deep breath, and for a moment, Sofie could see the pain etched in his features. "I had a family, a promising career, and a vision for my future. But in one tragic accident, it all vanished. I lost my loved ones and the drive to pursue my dreams. I became a recluse, hiding from the world that had betrayed me." His eyes glistened with unshed tears, and Sofie felt her heart swell with empathy. "How did you cope?" "I learned that life goes on, even when we don't want it to," he said quietly. "I realized that in giving back I could find meaning again. That's why I chose you. I see the potential for greatness in you, but it requires courage to embrace it." With Arthur's story echoing in her mind, Sofie faced a decision that would shape her future. The $1 million check could be a lifeline, a chance to escape her current life. But it could also be a means to fulfill her purpose, a chance to help others and honor the memory of Arthur's lost loved ones. As she wrestled with her thoughts, her mind drifted back to her dreams. The dream of opening a small art studio, a place where people could express themselves and find solace in creativity. What if she could use this money to create a safe haven for those struggling like her? Sofie's heart raced at the thought. "I want to use the money to open an art center," she said, her voice steady. "A place where people can come together, heal and create. I want to give back, just like you said." Arthur's expression brightened, and for the first time Sofie saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "That's an admirable choice, Sofie. But remember, it's not just about the money. It's about the impact you'll have on others." Just as she felt a rush of clarity, the atmosphere shifted. Sofie's phone buzzed in her pocket, disrupting the moment. She pulled it out to see multiple missed calls from Emily and Jack, anxiety flooding her senses. "I need to take this," she said, rising from her chair. As she stepped outside, the crisp air hit her like a wave, grounding her amidst the whirlwind of emotions. "What's going on?" she asked, answering the call. "Where are you?" Emily's voice was laced with urgency. "You need to come back to the diner. There's been an accident." The words hit Sofie like a punch to the gut. She felt the ground shift beneath her, a sense of impending dread washing over her. "An accident? What happened?" she demanded, her heart racing. "It's Jack. He was in a car crash." "They're saying it's bad," Emily said, her voice cracking. Sofie's world spun out of control. "I'll be right there," she shouted, her mind racing with fear. She hung up and turned back to Arthur, her heart heavy. "I have to go. Jack, he needs me." Arthur's expression turned grave. "I understand. Go. This is the moment where your character is truly tested, Sofie. You'll need to decide what matters most to you in the face of adversity." With those words ringing in her ears, Sofie rushed out of the estate, uncertainty flooding her thoughts. The $1 million check felt distant now, overshadowed by the gravity of her current reality. In that moment she realized that true courage was not just about facing the unknown, it was about showing up for those we love when it mattered most. As she drove back to the diner, the weight of her choices pressed down on her. The confrontation with Arthur had revealed profound truths, but now, with Jack's fate uncertain, Sofie felt the ground shift beneath her once more. The drive back to the diner felt like an eternity. Sofie's mind raced, her heart pounding against her chest as she navigated the familiar streets. She replayed Arthur's words in her mind, the weight of her decision hanging over her like a storm cloud. When she pulled into the diner's parking lot, a knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. The yellow lights flickered softly against the encroaching dusk, but the warmth of the diner felt distant compared to the tumult within her. She knew she had to be there for Jack. He was more than a friend, he was a lifeline during her darkest days. As she rushed inside, the comforting sounds of clinking dishes and the hum of chatter enveloped her. But her gaze was immediately drawn to the commotion near the counter. Emily stood with her arms crossed, her expression a mix of worry and frustration, while the regular customers looked on with concerned faces. Sofie approached, dread filling her heart. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice trembling. Emily turned, her eyes wide with concern. "Jack was in an accident. They took him to the hospital. I tried to call you, but—" "I know. I'm so sorry." Sofie's voice cracked. "Is he okay?" "We don't know yet," Emily said, biting her lip. "He's in surgery." Sofie's world felt like it was crumbling. Jack had always been there for her, a constant in her life that grounded her amidst her dreams and struggles. The thought of losing him sent waves of fear coursing through her veins. "I should have been there," she whispered, guilt gnawing at her insides. Emily stepped closer, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You had to take care of yourself too, Soph. We all know how much this money means to you. But Jack needs you right now." "I know," Sofie replied, her resolve hardening. "I need to be there for him, but I also need to figure out what I want." As the reality of her situation sank in, she recalled her conversation with Arthur. He had given her a choice, a chance to change not just her life, but the lives of others. It was a moment of awakening, one that she couldn't ignore. Gathering her thoughts, Sofie turned to Emily and the other diners, determination igniting within her. "I'm going to help Jack," she said, her voice steady. "But I can't ignore what Arthur offered me. I have to make a choice about that money." Emily frowned. "Soph, you don't have to put that pressure on yourself right now. Just focus on Jack." "No," Sofie insisted. "I've thought about it. I could use that money to open the art center I've always dreamed of. It could help people like us, people who feel stuck and need a way to express themselves. It could change lives. And I want to do it for Jack, for all of us." The diner was silent as her words hung in the air. One by one, the regular customers nodded, their expressions shifting from concern to understanding. They knew the struggles she faced, the dreams she had set aside, and the potential she possessed. But even as Sofie declared her intentions, a wave of anxiety washed over her. Choosing to pursue her dreams meant sacrificing the immediate comfort of stability and the uncertainties that came with it. What if she failed? What if the money wasn't enough? "Are you sure about this?" Emily asked, searching Sofie's eyes. "It's a big decision." "I'm sure," Sofie replied, her voice unwavering. "It's time to take a leap of faith." With newfound clarity, Sofie picked up her phone and called Arthur. "I'm ready to use the money, but I want to make it count. The first want to create a community space for art and healing." Arthur's voice came through the line, filled with warmth. "That's a noble pursuit, Sofie. Remember, it's not just about the money, it's about the impact you'll have on others. You're choosing to invest in something greater than yourself." "I know, and I'm willing to make sacrifices if it means helping others," Sofie affirmed. "But I need guidance." "I'll help you. You'll need a plan, and I'll be here to support you as you bring your vision to life," he said, a note of approval in his voice. "It's a challenge, but it's one worth taking." After hanging up, Sofie felt lighter. She had made her decision, and now it was time to act. She turned back to Emily, who wore an encouraging smile. "I'm proud of you, Soph. You've always had a heart for helping others. Now you're taking a step toward making that happen." Sofie nodded, a sense of purpose igniting within her. "I need to see Jack first. I need him to know that I'm here for him." As the evening wore on, Sofie remained at the diner, waiting for updates about Jack. She reflected on her choices, realizing that the $1 million check was not just a windfall, it was a catalyst for change. It represented the potential to create something meaningful, to give back to a community that had nurtured her dreams, even if those dreams felt buried under the weight of reality. Just then, the hospital called with news. Jack was out of surgery, and while it would take time for him to recover, he would be okay. Relief washed over Sofie, and tears of gratitude filled her eyes. As she left the diner that night, Sofie felt as if a new chapter was beginning. She had faced her fears, navigated the depths of uncertainty, and chosen a path that aligned with her values. No longer would she be defined by her struggles, she would carve her own destiny. As she stood outside, gazing up at the stars that twinkled overhead, she felt the weight of Arthur's wisdom settle in her heart. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it would be worthwhile. She was ready to embrace the challenges that lay ahead, to rise from the ashes of her past and help others rise with her. In that moment, the $1 million check transformed into something far more significant. It was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of choice. Sofie was determined to build a brighter future, not just for herself, but for everyone whose lives she could touch. With renewed strength, she drove to the hospital, knowing that she was not just chasing her dreams, she was also building a community of dreamers ready to heal, create, and thrive together. Days turned into weeks, and as Sofie returned to the diner, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The bustling atmosphere of the small-town eatery felt different now. It thrummed with energy that she hadn't noticed before. The coffee still brewed with the same comforting aroma, and the grill still sizzled with the sound of burgers and fries. But this time, Sofie wasn't just a waitress, she was a catalyst for change. The regular customers greeted her with familiar smiles, but there was something different about their interactions. The whispers of the mysterious check had faded, replaced by genuine curiosity and support. People had learned about her decision to create an art center, and it seemed to inspire those around her. They began to share their dreams, their hopes, and their stories, each one a thread in the rich tapestry of their community. As she moved between tables, serving coffee and taking orders, Sofie felt lighter, her heart buoyed by the encouragement she received. Conversations flowed more easily, laughter echoed through the diner, and she could sense a shift in the atmosphere. It was as if her own resolve had ignited a spark in others. One of her first stops was to visit Jack in the hospital. He was recovering well, his spirit unbroken despite the pain he had endured. As she entered his room, the sight of him propped up against the pillows brought tears to her eyes. "Hey there, superstar," she said, a grin breaking through her worry. "Sofie, you're my hero," he replied, his voice warm and teasing. "I heard about your big plans. You're actually going to go through with it." "I am," she said, sitting down beside him. "I'm going to build an art center for people like us, to help them express themselves, to show them that they matter." Jack's eyes sparkled with pride. "That's amazing, Sofie. You've always had this in you. I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted, taking his hand. "You've always believed in me, even when I didn't." Jack smiled softly, his expression turning serious. "You need to believe in yourself now. This is just the beginning." As the weeks passed, Sofie's determination rippled through the community. She organized a fundraiser at the diner, inviting local artists and musicians to showcase their talents. The event was a resounding success, and the outpouring of support took her breath away. Families gathered, sharing meals while local musicians played upbeat tunes. Artists displayed their work, vibrant canvases spilling color into the otherwise mundane diner. People poured in to support her vision, many purchasing art pieces, donating to her cause, and even signing up for classes once the center opened. Standing at the front of the diner that night, Sofie felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Thank you all for believing in this dream with me," she called out, her voice cracking with emotion. "Together we can create a space for healing and creativity, a place where every one of us can thrive." As the crowd cheered, Sofie noticed familiar faces among the attendees. Emily, her loyal friend, waved enthusiastically. The regulars from the diner wore bright smiles, and even Arthur, her mysterious benefactor, had come to witness the fruits of her labor. In the following weeks, Sofie also took the time to reconnect with her family. She invited her parents to the diner, hoping to bridge the distance that had grown over the years. The conversation was initially awkward, filled with polite inquiries and hesitant smiles. "Your dad and I have been talking about how proud we are of you," her mother finally said, a hint of emotion in her voice. "We've seen the changes in you and we want to support your dreams." Sofie felt a rush of warmth, the weight of her family's approval settling over her like a comforting blanket. "I've been working on something big. I want to create a space for art in town, a place for people to express themselves." Her father nodded thoughtfully. "That sounds like a worthwhile endeavor, Sofie. You always did have a talent for bringing people together." With each shared story and laughter that echoed through their time together, Sofie felt a healing begin. They talked late into the evening, sharing memories and rekindling bonds that had felt frayed. For the first time in years, Sofie felt truly seen and accepted. As the event kicked off, the atmosphere crackled with enthusiasm. People mingled, exchanged stories, and showcased their artwork. Sofie wandered through the crowd, engaging with guests, her heart swelling with joy. She thought back to the time when she had felt stuck, adrift in her circumstances. The diner had been her refuge, a place of comfort amidst uncertainty. Now it was a launching pad for her dreams and the dreams of others. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm golden glow over the diner. As Sofie stood outside, watching her community come together, she felt a sense of peace settle within her. With the art centre soon to open, Sofie realized her journey was far from over. There would be challenges ahead: fundraising, planning, and the inevitable bumps in the road, but she was ready to face them head-on. She had discovered not just a career path, but a passion that would guide her for years to come. The money from the check had unlocked something deeper within her, a sense of purpose that she had never fully embraced until now. As she stood with friends and family, laughter filling the air, she felt a profound connection to everyone around her. Each person had their struggles, their dreams, and together they would forge a future full of possibilities. "Here's to new beginnings," she said, raising a glass, her heart full. "To art, to healing, and to us." And as the cheers rang out, Sofie knew she had found her place not just in the diner, but in the hearts of her community, where dreams could flourish, and together they could create something beautiful. As the art centre prepared for its grand opening, Sofie felt a sense of excitement thrumming through her veins. The walls that had once been bare now held vibrant artworks, a kaleidoscope of colours and emotions. Each piece told a story, and Sofie knew that these stories would resonate deeply with those who walked through the doors. The small-town diner continued to be her haven, but it no longer felt like the confines of her world. It was a part of a much larger tapestry that she was weaving, one filled with dreams, aspirations, and a community coming together. Each day she moved through the diner with purpose, her heart brimming with gratitude for the journey that had led her to this moment. Sofie found herself reflecting on the choices she had made. The $1 million check had changed everything, but it was not merely the money that had transformed her life, it was the journey of self-discovery that came with it. The challenges she had faced, the doubts she had conquered, and the love she had found in her community had all contributed to her growth. The art centre opening day arrived, and the air buzzed with anticipation. Colourful banners adorned the entrance, and a large sign proclaimed, "Welcome to the Creative Haven." Friends, family and community members gathered to celebrate, their faces lit with excitement. Sofie stood at the front, her heart pounding. She had prepared a speech but decided to speak from the heart instead. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This space represents more than just art, it represents hope, connection, and the belief that we can all create something beautiful together." Applause erupted as she gestured towards the walls filled with local artists' work. Each piece was a testament to the talent that lay within the community, and she felt a deep sense of pride. This centre was not just hers, it belonged to everyone. As she mingled with guests, she realized how far she had come. Conversations flowed easily, laughter filled the room, and the sense of belonging enveloped her. She spoke with Emily, who was now organizing art classes, and Jack, who was healing and working on his photography, capturing moments of beauty. Months passed, and Sofie found her rhythm. The art centre flourished, offering workshops, exhibitions, and community events. She created a space where creativity thrived, where people could express themselves and connect with one another. Each success felt like a step toward a brighter future. As she worked late one evening, tidying up after a particularly vibrant art class, she sat in the center of the room, surrounded by laughter and chatter. The sounds of the community echoed around her, and she felt a sense of fulfillment wash over her. This was where she belonged. In those quiet moments, Sofie began to dream again, not just for herself, but for the community she loved. Ideas flourished in her mind: art festivals, collaborations with local schools, outreach programs for underprivileged youth. Each thought ignited a fire within her, a vision of what was possible when people came together with a shared purpose. One afternoon, as she prepared for an upcoming exhibition, a familiar face appeared in the doorway. It was Arthur, looking as warm and supportive as ever. He approached her with a smile, and she felt a swell of gratitude for the guidance he had offered. "Sofie," he said, "I've been meaning to tell you how proud I am of what you've accomplished. You've created something beautiful here." "Thank you, Arthur," she replied, her voice filled with sincerity. "I wouldn't be here without your push. You made me believe that I could do more than just survive." He nodded thoughtfully. "You've embraced your potential, and it's inspiring. But remember, the journey doesn't end here. There are always new dreams to chase." His words resonated deeply within her. She had been so focused on the present that she had almost forgotten to dream beyond the horizon. What if there were more? What if their art centre could serve as a stepping stone to even greater aspirations? That night, Sofie lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with possibilities. She thought of the community that had rallied around her, of the friendships she had formed, and the support she had received. It was more than she had ever imagined. She began to sketch in her journal new ideas for classes, potential collaborations with nearby towns, and even thoughts about expanding the center's mission. Her heart raced with excitement as she envisioned a future filled with artistic expression, connection, and joy. Sofie also reflected on her relationships, especially with her family. They had become closer over the months, their conversations richer and more meaningful. She felt as if she was building bridges where once there had been walls. Each visit felt like a homecoming, and she cherished the time spent with them. As spring turned to summer, the art center celebrated its first anniversary. The community gathered for a night of celebration, filled with music, art, and stories. Sofie stood before her guests, a mix of familiar faces and new friends, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you for being here to celebrate this milestone with me," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "This center is a reflection of all of us. It's a testament to what we can achieve when we come together, believe in one another, and dare to dream." As the night unfolded, Sofie watched her community come alive with creativity and connection. She felt a profound sense of belonging, as if she had finally found her place in the world. With the stars shining brightly overhead, she realized that her journey had only just begun. The $1 million check had sparked a fire within her, but it was her choices, her relationships, and her dreams that would continue to shape her life. As the last notes of the music faded and the lights dimmed, Sofie stood outside the art center, gazing at the stars. She felt a sense of peace envelop her, knowing that she had embraced her true self. Her past had shaped her, but it no longer defined her. She had learned that life was not solely about financial gains, it was about connection, growth, and the courage to pursue one's passions. The future felt bright, and as she stood there, a wave of possibilities washed over her. Sofie smiled, ready to embrace whatever came next. Her heart was open to new dreams, new adventures, and new opportunities. The journey was far from over, and she was eager to see where it would take her. As she took a deep breath, the cool night air filled her lungs, and she whispered a silent promise to herself to never stop dreaming, to never stop creating, and to always seek the beauty in every moment. And with that, Sofie stepped into her future, a radiant smile lighting her face, the echoes of her past guiding her toward an even brighter tomorrow.